Good day. This is Steve McCoy with the OSC board. And this is the first of a group of offerings that we'll have for training with regard to our OSC Google G Suite accounts. These are the accounts that are used for board communications, for document storage, and in many cases will be made available to outside resources, the rest of the membership, for certain files that they may want to take advantage of as well. This initial section will discuss basic email access and how we accomplish that using standard tools. We're going to initially start with how to sign in to your Google Gmail accounts for the Omaha Symphonic Chorus. Those members who are assigned email access will be given their email account IDs and an initial password, just like many other systems. For purposes of this exercise, I'm going to be using the Google Chrome browser. The other browsers available, whether it be Apple Safari, Firefox, Microsoft Internet Explorer, which, if you aren't aware, Internet Explorer hasn't been supported technically by Microsoft since 2014. The newer version is Microsoft Edge. All of these will work very similarly. I will not be approaching the issues of the differences in the browsers as I describe some of the elements here, but focusing on the Google pieces. Will always be available to assist folks with any particular questions they might have, and feel free to contact me. More information will come on that later. Right now, this is accessed using Chrome. I've gone to the www.google.com page, HTTPS as a prefix, so always use that. The S is a secure mode of communications that assists in avoiding some problems with certain certificates and things like that you may have heard of. At this point, I have multiple Gmail accounts. I have a personal one as well, so I'm going to show the differences in signing on as it might relate to other folks also. Gmail is not accessible until you sign in. We'll talk about images, and we'll talk about this little box, which is the application cluster, later. So to begin your session, click Sign In, and you'll be prompted with a Google dialog box that looks very similar to this. You see, in this case, I have two Steve McCoy accounts, one at gmail.com myself, and then the one that we're going to be using at omahasymphonichorus.org. This is all lowercase, or case doesn't matter in this. If you have other accounts, you can also have it accessible too. It may be known to your browser, so it might show up, and I can assist if necessary for that. But for purposes of the exercise today, we're going to sign into this account. So when you get to this point, select the account or type in your actual email address if you have no accounts previously saved by your browser, and you'll be prompted for a password. In this case, you've seen something pop up that I take advantage of. There's a product called Dashlane that maintains passwords securely for users, and so I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm not going to manually type my password in, but when you get this same dialog box, you enter the initial password of the one you've changed to after you've entered the accounts for the first time. And I'm going to select and tell it to use my one for Symphonic Chorus, and it automatically has entered that password now. and Gmail and Google Suite information can be made available to me. To get into Gmail, I simply go up here, and you can always make sure what account you're signed into by hovering over an icon. You'll also be able to see later how you can put photos or select various icons to show up, but by hovering over my photo in this upper right hand corner, it tells me which account I'm signed into, symphonichorus.org. Click the Gmail button, and you'll be taken into your Gmail account. Yours will obviously look different based on the information you may be reflecting on at a given point in time. It's very much like other electronic mail or services that you might see. Gmail has a few quirks. I'll hit on a few of those. It will work a little bit differently from one platform to another, so I won't be able to address everything. We just want to get through basic functions, and be happy to assist again if folks have individual questions. The inbox is basically where we're at now. You see that highlighted here. Other things that show up, if I have highlighted message threads, and I'll touch on that term shortly, like starred message threads were important conversations that may have been taking place at some point in time. You can turn any email and message thread or sequence of messages into a starred one to get back to quickly. Snoozed would be messages that you have in your inbox, but you don't want to see clutter up the inbox, so you can put them out to lunch, if you will, and retrieve them later. Just like other things, as you create and send email, you'll have a sent folder that you can get to clean up. You'll have a drafts folder, which will show drafts where you've started to prepare a message and decided, gee, I'm not ready to proceed with that. And there are additional options under the More button. Here again, you can highlight things as important. Chats, you can define categories for your messages. You can create labeling options for messages and things. Here again, I won't touch on this today, but feel free to contact me if you want to have help with additional stuff. Chats, I'll mention briefly, are instant messaging options that you have. So if you're logged into Google and you have contacts, other contacts within OSC that you want to reach out to, or even other contacts, you can click on chat, select their names, and initiate instant messaging services with them. But for now, I'm going to go back to Les, and we'll talk about basic functions here, continuing. Mail is the icon for the mail service. Needless to say, main menu basically just shrinks down the items that we've looked at. Plus gets me into a composition mode. Hold on, let me go back to the drafts and everything that's there. So if I am in here and I've received a message from someone, we'll use Robert's message to the board as an example at the moment. That gets me into the thread of messages that are tied to that. Right now, this is a unique message, so there's only one that shows up. I'll show an example of a sequence of messages, but Robert sent this to folks with regard to scheduled board meeting and information that's available to us. We also have things like attached documents with respect to it. You can get to that attachments a couple different ways. You can do instant replies. Let's look at the standard reply options. First, you can archive or save a message. You can report it as spam, which you shouldn't have to do on the OSC email account. You can delete this message from here inside the message itself by hitting the delete button. You can mark it as unread, so even though you've opened it, it'll show up in your inbox as an unread message. Let's use that as sometimes highlighting those messages makes it easier to get to. You can snooze it, as I mentioned before, so you can make it go away from appearing in your inbox in a fashion that catches your eye immediately and come back to it later. You can move this message to another folder, so you can have personal archives or personal messages that you want to move to a place. If I want to move to ones that are pre-selected, I have social, updates, forums, promotions, spam, and trash. Or I can create my own personal ones. I don't recommend spending a lot of time with this at the moment, but it is there. The labels were mentioned there. You can put specific label buckets tied to messages. Clicking on these dots, multiple dots, usually indicates that there's something to expand. You can mark several options with regard to that. Filter can be useful if you get very large email boxes. I'm not going to go through it right now because I really wouldn't recommend it highly unless you're planning on trying to keep everything forever. Over here you can scroll through one message at a time. I can go forward and backward in the sequences of things that I have in my mailbox. Settings allows me to pick the information, the options for how I display, how long I keep things, themes, additional add-ons. Here again, I don't necessarily recommend it. If you don't like the density, which is the mail messages grouped together, you can display that and you can ultimately change it in settings. Over here, and we'll come back to it, we have immediate access to your calendar. In the G Suite, if you have an email box, you also have a calendar that is yours. That is different than anything that would be a shared calendar. Here again, like other items, you can tell something to keep a message, you can list tasks, and you've got options for add-ons, which we won't go through right now. But basic functionality is tied to what we've seen so far. If I want to compose a message from scratch, I click the Compose button, and I get a pop-up box, well, as long as I don't double-click it, where I can type in the information I need to get to. For this exercise, I'm just going to go to Steve McCoy, and there are some presets. Members of the board are presets that will populate as soon as it starts to recognize it. My box, my contacts has my own personal multiple messages or multiple email addresses. I'm going to select Steve Dot, which is the only one that takes me to symphonichorus.org. You can click on it to expand it, or you can type it out completely. Here I'm going to put the subject that I want to go to. Test text. Say that 15 times very rapidly. You do have options for your message output, just like you would in most other email packages. Just putting some things in here we can pick. You can change the font of given selected information. These are the standard fonts that come with it. To home is the default. Bad choice, Steve. Oop, picked that one already. So you can see a little difference in these. Serif has now most of you know what that is or isn't. This button allows you to pick. You can't do like Microsoft Office and select a point font at a time. You can select normal, large, or our lovely friend huge. You also have the option to make something bold. You can put things in italics. You can underline them, or you can highlight the text with a background color or change the color of the text. So let's pick something really ugly. If I want to change that text to that, and let's say I want to put a highlight on a given one, and I can select that in the respective locations. That is pretty ugly. Also got the ability to put emojis in. You can add files off of your Google Drive. We'll address that in another lesson. You can insert pictures that you browse to on your drive. So, oh, that's scary. I hate to add my own from there, but we'll do it for purpose of the exercise. You can resize it. You probably don't want to send and request money, but that is an option that's built into it as well. If you don't want to go anywhere with this message, then you can immediately delete where you're at. You can have more options like we've talked about before. And if you've got individual questions there, again, hit me with that. You can bullet things like you would with other products, either in dot formats or numbered formats. You can indent by selecting an individual line and move it from one place to another. And when you have your message the way you want it, simply send it. Now in this case, it came back immediately. You see it now showing up in my inbox, and you have access to that. I'm going to pull it right back up, and we see the message as it came in, just like it would if you were sending to somebody else. Now I don't really care to see that, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it immediately, and we'll go from there. We mentioned before there are some messages that may have multiple versions of a message that people would see. So if you'll see, I'm not going to go through these in detail, but a little number on these lines will tell you how many messages are involved in that thread of messages. So if I click on this, I literally can see and expand and go up and down in the versions and responses of the messages that were there. When I see one that is the level that I want to respond to, I can enter just that message, and over here, if I reply, it'll be to just that message instead of the whole thing. You've got other options. I can reply to all. I can forward, just like we would on any of the above. I can go to show original, and it'll show me what the first thing looked like. We won't go into this. This is how us technical geeks sit there and resolve internal messaging formats and things along that line as it popped into a separate window. But going back to my inbox, that's the bulk of it. Anytime you're in, if you want to refresh your inbox manually, it will refresh. Can't remember what the frequency is, to be honest with you. That would depend on what was in your settings. And you can all look at that individually, because I know some of you may already have Gmail set up for another account. If you have it on another account, some of those settings will carry over to this account and some won't. But that's the bulk of what we have with the Gmail resources. Like I say, this is largely targeted at Symphonic Chorus board members and associates to activities that the board addresses. we'll continue to develop more of these training sessions going forward. Next time, we'll talk about the items that show up under your application suite tied to your account. People will have different icons depending on the applications that are accessible to them. You're stuck with me having everything, which can be confusing, but I'll try and clarify those as we go. For now, that's it. When you're done with your Gmail sessions, it's always going to be suggested that you would go in and sign out. It will carry across browser sessions for you from one to another, but not across different types of browsers as a normal issue. So when you're done, sign out. You'll go back to a basic Google page or a re-sign up page. Like I say, next time we'll address more of the information in the app suites, starting with the Google Drives. Thank you.